Patch 10.1 has dropped. While not featuring any nerfs to some of the best weapons of the game, we do have a very interesting Brella rework and some other notable buffs. So let's get into the changes, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. Let's get our 2-shooter mini reworks out of the way first. This is Splash-O-Matic and 52, both getting one buff and one nerf. For Splash, it's getting the same 3% range and shot velocity buff we've been seeing for a while. However, this comes with the exchange that it will now paint about 3% worse. These are both small changes, but the idea is pretty obvious here. More emphasis in fighting, and less of the ability to hold space by painting and getting its special output. In particular, this hurts Neo Splash, I feel, more than Vanilla Splash, and I think it's a good direction since V-Splash's kit has been nerfed in so many different ways, so it makes sense to give that power back to the main weapon. 52, on the other hand, will have slightly faster shots by 39%. In exchange, however, it will be 15% more ink hungry. The devs at the bottom have stated that this is so it can push the line forward more easily and defeat several opponents in a multi-kill, but make it harder for the weapon to just stall and hold space, mainly via splash wall spam this time rather than pure special output. Personally, I like both these changes. I don't think the weapon's spot in the meta is going to change very much, though Splash does fit better with what support is right now, being more fight focused. Overall though, this is just a small direction change that I think is important. I'm gonna skip Brella and get to it at the end because there is so much to talk about here, and I think the general consensus of people saying they gutted it is totally wrong. Anyway, next up is Splattershot Nova getting another accuracy buff, this one being 18% on grounded shots. I still think Nova doesn't really have any kit that's super desirable for competitive play right now, but I can't deny that the weapon's accuracy is starting to hit a point that its kill time isn't actually that bad anymore. Like, it's not good by any means, but you're actually going to be consistently dealing damage to the opponent. Clash Blaster is getting a small 13% paint buff. If you played Clash a bit, you might know that sometimes there's a bit of gaps in its paint trail. This should hopefully fix it if the number is large enough. Dowser Dualies are getting a shot velocity increase both with and without being in a dodge roll. This is a big problem for the weapon and does make it easier to track and get more consistent damage on opponents, but I still hold firm that without a paint increase, this weapon still isn't going to fit in any comps particularly well. However, I do think this is a good direction in terms of a buff, and I'm fine with seeing it. Recycle Brella is getting an increase to its shield HP both before it's launched and after. This buff is pretty good for a lot of reasons. First off, this is just the area the weapon needs, but also its paint, uptime, and special output of a good special being Big Bubbler were all already relative strengths of the weapon. And if anything, those will be even better. Recycle paints by launching its shield quite a bit, and that takes longer to shred. Therefore, it's actually going to be painting a bit more too. The real question to me is how good is this thing going to be at combat? I think its paint and special output were already fine before, but if it's able to also take some fights, I think it'll be good because I don't really see this being a support slot, though maybe if it's paired with something like a dually, it could work. So I could see the potential for dive comps being focused around its bubble output. That being said though, it's still definitely a tricky weapon and a bit of a long shot, so we'll have to see. Next up is the special weapons. Zipcaster gets a tiny buff, being a 9% larger radius increase to the area that does 45 damage. Sure, why not? Inkstorm will be getting a radius increase of 18%, which is a total area increase of about 39% by the way. This is very similar to its big buff in patch 1.4 of Splatoon 2, which did result in it being pretty meta in that game, though this one does have stronger specials. That said, the displacement, extra paint, and especially larger radius to take advantage of the healing are all extremely notable. I think this will by far be most relevant on Nautilus, as this weapon's already pretty solid, and enhancing one of the weaker kits here might just be what pushes it over the edge into a meta spot. Last up is Ink Vacuum. Now, the radius of a full charge explosion will be 10% larger, which, that's just silly, it's already gigantic, but whatever. The main change though is that you can now absorb more ink. How much more ink? I don't know, they didn't say anything. Currently it's 800. If I had to take a guess, I'd assume it would be about 1,000. But I can't really say how impactful this buff is because it kind of depends how high that number is. What I do think this will do, however, is that it'll create more of an emphasis on running weapons that can actually kill through Ink Vacuum, or create an emphasis on making sure you force Ink Vacuum out early like you do currently with Big Bubbler, since the ability to fill it once it's popped and punish it will now be be weaker. I have doubts that it'll make it an amazing special anywhere besides Rainmaker. However, we really have to see when we actually get the numbers. Finally is a whole host of points for special changes, which is to be expected with third kits. We saw minus 10 points for special on a lot of chump weapons in particular, being Carbon, Bamboo, Dually Squelchers, and the new Tenebrella. 2 of the big Swig Rollers will also get cheaper specials, along with Octobrush's Kraken, and Explo and Nautilus's Triple Splashdown. There are also some points for special nerfs here. Paintbrush with a 190 Zuka, I mean it did spam it a lot, so I get it. Mini Splatling with its Zuka, which is the closest thing to a meta nerf we have in this patch, it did spam a lot of it, and Reflux getting 210 on Booyah. If you don't know, this one is also good in Turf War, so it is suffering the same fate as the vanilla one. However, I skipped a points for special change, and that's Brella. Splat Brella is going from 200 to 210 for Ink Strike, and Sorella Brella is the first ever, besides GooTubers before launch, check out the meta history by the way, plus 20 points for special change, going from 190 to 210 Inkjet. And I think a lot of people saw this and assumed Nintendo just shot Brella for no reason. However, these patch changes are here for a good reason. So let's talk about what happened to Brella. This weapon got 3 changes. First off is 2 paint changes. One for the point of impact by shots, which I would assume is the trail, and one for the spray droplets created, which would be the burst at the end. This is basically a paint buff, and explains exactly why the points for special change is here, as confirmed by the developer patch notes, which is that the special output of Brella seemed like it was not in check with these changes put in, and so they're using that as a way to keep it in check. Personally, I'm totally fine with that as long as the paint really is that insane, which we don't know for sure, so we'll have to see, but I think I have good reason to believe that yes, it will probably be a significant paint increase, because they seem to be moving towards it being a more supportive weapon, and that's emphasized even more by the third change. The shots from Brella now start close together like they used to, but they will spread out into a wider area than previously. To fully understand this change, I think it's good to take a look at the actual developer thoughts for this. They said that they expanded Brella's range to make it easier to defend from attacks and keep opponents in check to maintain battle lines, along with using the canopy. The idea behind this isn't just that the weapon paints better to paint better, it's that it's easier to trap opponents and limit their movement, making it easier for you to keep people away and maintain the amount of map control that you have. That is often what supports are supposed to do, whereas Brella in the past with its better damage output would be able to focus on taking fights and 1v1s that it would focus on the kill. In addition to that, they said that the other change with the expanded area of the shots makes it easier to support allies by dealing small, reliable damage, while making one-on-one fights require you to get closer to be able to quickly defeat opponents. This means that to two-shot people, you will have to be up close, but at a distance, it will probably be less consistent than it is now. Now I get it, weaker kill power on a weapon with already infamously pathetic damage does sound bad at first, but here's the thing. Brella at max range was never really two-shotting consistently anyway, so I don't really care that much. It only really worked if you were up close, where it should, at least hopefully, still work. So the only real change for me here is that, yeah, maybe I'll deal slightly less damage at max range, but I'm more likely to get that damage. And that's what's important with Brella. 2 pellets deal just over 30 damage, and you guys already know what it means to have 30 damage. Do you all want to know what the real damage buff of Brella is? It's allowing the weapon to be in a support slot so that you're now playing it in place of something like a splash, and you can now run 2 weapons that are actually capable of dealing damage. Your weapon's no longer as responsible for that. You just need to stall fights, pull attention, and deal that small 30 amount of damage, which you can do more consistently to set up your teammates. And that's really what this rework is. They want Brella to be in the support slot. They're making it more distinct from Recycle, which by contrast is now being pushed to be more of a Slayer with the increased shield HP, and personally, I'm fine with this. A lot of Brellas that played Splatoon 2 did play for that higher damage and being very aggressive, especially in Japan. So I can understand if people don't like this, and I'm definitely biased. I'm a support player, and I feel my strength was being good at stalling and shield placement in order to drag out out fights. In other words, the changes here benefit the way I play the game and the comps I play with. But at the end of the day, this is a direction for the weapon that I do like. They're really trying here, and they're giving it real tools to do something different. And there's a lot of things that could work with it. Options like dualies and swords can fend for their own landings like they can with Brella and emphasize the mobility, or you could just run 2 really high damage weapons and emphasize Brella's skirmishing and playing for that attention and having multiple weapons that can combo off it. I do wish the Brella pellet damage at least dealt a little bit more, because doing 32 would be nice to combo with pencil, but that said, I do think there's a lot of potential here. Obviously, we don't know what these numbers actually look like. There's a chance that it's not good enough, or that the damage is still going to be too much of a problem. I don't know, but I'm willing to give it a shot, and I'm personally really excited for it. Now, the patch as a whole isn't really going to change that much. Unless if Vac and Storm become super meta specials, we've had an extremely volatile 3 months of a lot of new things doing good. So introducing some nice buffs and reworks to make weapons more healthy for the game is a fine direction for the time being. I'm excited to see what happens, and as per usual, here's the chart of every weapon that was changed. We'll have to see what happens when everything drops, and I hope you are all looking forward to it. I'm personally really excited to know that Brella is going to have a chance. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.